When the board first set about its work in the winter of, I guess it was 1968, there having been nothing but a student journal before us, we had little time to do any more planning than how to get this first volume 1, issue 1 out, we hoped, on time. Recall that when we started, there was no content in the pipeline. These 1,000 articles, we had none. We had no student writing. And we were expected to put out a full volume. I'll tell you what that was to be in a minute, but within that year. Not only was there no content, none of the specifics of the printing specifics had even been thought about. Not even the paper stock. We had to pick a paper stock. No planning of the page layout, margins, line spacing, typeface, font size. No design of masthead, table of contents, faculty listing. There wasn't even a printer identified, let alone retained. We had no Peggy. We did it. The only thing that we didn't have to do, and there's only one thing that we just, as students, didn't do about the law review, and I want to publicly announce this today. We had nothing to do with the cover of this law review. Those of you who know this was the cover of the law review for what, the first 15 volumes or something like that? I always avoided looking at it, so I don't know how long it lasted. But it's sort of Art Deco, militaristic, proto-Nazi. And so I wanted it known publicly I had nothing to do with this. It was forced on us by the University Publication Office. The faculty had made it clear that they would be satisfied if we put out 2 issues in the range of 350 to 500 pages. I didn't know it at the time. I assumed it was in recognition of how flat on our backs we started. But it may well have been some real serious doubt about whether, having later read Dean Craston's lighthearted bon voyage on a path that he hoped would not end in a decent burial. But in any event, they had a rather meager expectation of the first editorial board. In fact, we printed 3 issues and exceeded 700 pages. And we were pretty proud of that, having started with no content whatsoever. I will say that a few years later, there was almost tearful pride, I will say, when the first board bumped up the law review to 4 issues. That was a really big deal. It was supposed to be 2. We, without telling the dean, exceeded the budget and promised it and did print 3, but it stayed at 3 until it got bumped up to 4, and it was never receded back to 2, at least not as an expectation. And it stayed, 70% of the volumes published by the University to the Law Review had 4 issues, some as many as 1,300 pages. While working on our 3rd issue and while picking our successor board, we began to hope that the process that we struggled to develop might replicate itself. The feeling among the board in those last months in our purgatory was really almost palpable. The hope that there would be, that it would carry on. It was a very able board, we thought, coming in. We knew Kirby Boston, and he was an extraordinary editor-in-chief. He's an extraordinary writer, extraordinary mind, extraordinary human being. He carried it on marvelously. He and Paul Hancock probably by themselves. I mean, you have to remember, most people who were in that law school at the time had no idea about the significance of law review, had no idea of the career implications of it. They had little of the primary incentive, therefore, to put in those hours of drudgery and intellectual labor. There were some of us, even in those last few months, who began to silently harbor the dream that this process, this publication, might become an institution, and it has. We all made it so. So on behalf of board number 1, I want to thank you for realizing our dream.